Hello, everyone. My name is Nishant Gurav. I'm from the student committee of the Society for Ethnobotany, and I welcome all of you for today's Student Cafe. Today, our guest is Dr. Luisa Maffi, who is the co founder and director of Terralingua and the editor of Landscape magazine. As you all know that this cafe is a bi-monthly student cafe where we connect students with ethnobotanists who are working and for students who have an idea and an opportunity to interact with experts who are working in this field. This cafe that's happening right now is intended to be a interaction, a dialogue with Dr. Louisa. And again, I'd like to thank her for accepting this, and I'm really excited for the session. So I ask all of you to keep your questions ready when we start. Before we begin, I'd like to talk about the Society for Ethnobotany, who is organizing this. Our mission is to foster and encourage scientific research, education, and related activities on the past, present, and future uses of plants and the relationship between plants and people, and to make the results of such research available to scientific community and the general public through meetings and publications. You can become a member of the Society for Ethnobotany. And there are a lot of benefits once you become a member, such as free access to the Economic Botany, the Society's quarter journal, eligibility to submit manuscripts to Economic Botany, invitation and opportunity to present papers at the annual meeting and symposium, which this year is scheduled in Prague from June 7th to 12th, uh, invitation to and access to recordings of membership only events, eligibility for grants and awards in support of student research. And this is really, really helpful for students who are looking for awards such as travel awards and awards which can fund their research. And also the biannual newsletter. And of course, you are in a community, so you will be in touch with a lot of people with shared interests. The membership is very, very affordable, especially for students with a student membership of $30 per year, and there are different categories, but we also have an option of gift memberships. In case you need financial need, you can send an email to the email that I have given below, citing a reason that why you need financial aid, and when and if we have availability of gift memberships, we can sponsor your memberships. Finally, let me end by saying that this year's symposium is happening. It's the annual meeting that happens every year. It's happening in Prague. In fact, right here where I am in my university, from the 7th to 12th June. And it's gathering where diverse and global community of ethnobotanists come and share about their work. Registrations are still open, so any of you who's interested to attend this symposium, go ahead and register. And before we begin the interaction, I'd just like to introduce our speaker today. She's the co-founder and director of Terralingua, and she also spearheads their Terralingua's program of work in addition to serving as editor to the Terralingua's Langscape magazine. It's one of my favorite magazines. She's trained in linguistics, anthropology, and ethnobiology. She is one of the pioneers of the concept of biocultural diversity. Her interests in relationship between language, culture, and environment, and between linguistic, cultural, and biological diversity led her to co-found Terralingua in 1996 and to launch the organization's activities with the interdisciplinary conference Endangered Languages, Endangered Knowledge, Endangered Environments. She has such an extensive field experience in Somalia, Mexico, and she's also carried out research in China and Japan. One of my favorite books on linguistics and ethnolinguistics comes from her, which is the book which is volume Ethnobotany and Conservation of Biocultural Diversity and Biocultural Diversity Conservation. She has also worked on a variety of topics from Somali and Mayan linguistics to color categorization, ethnomedicine, traditional ecological knowledge. And basically, if I keep talking about her, we are going to talk about her for a long, long time. So, before I do that, I know that all of you have some questions, some comments, and even anything that you would like to share. The floor is open to everyone. So go ahead and we can do like this that the people who can kindly raise their hands who want to ask a question so that I can unmute yourself and then you can go ahead to ask. So people who want to ask a question, kindly raise your hands. There is a symbol or even over your video if you can raise your hands and then we can begin.
And I'll just quickly say thank you so much for
Yes.
the lovely introduction, Nishant. And I actually feel a little bit like a usurper talking to a bunch of ethnobotanists because although I did study ethnobiology and ethnobotany in particular, and with one of the true pioneers of contemporary ethnobiology, Professor Brent Berlin, my own field research and my subsequent career have not really been centrally in the field of ethnobiology, but I can say for sure that everything that I have learned about biocultural diversity started with everything that I learned about ethnobiology. So I feel, at the very least, very grounded in that field. And I really welcome all of your questions now. Who's going to break the ice?
I can break the ice.
Yeah, this is quite.
Hello, my
I'm
name is
sorry?
Ana Maria.
Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead. Did
Hi, my
you?
name is Ana Maria Garrido.
Yeah.
I am an anthropologist, a PhD student, and I am from Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
Just like an opening a question to like break the ice is like after almost 20 years of kind of promoting this idea of biocultural diversity. How do you think it has changed throughout the years and how it can still be useful to the present challenges that we are witnessing today with like more accentuated environmental degradation and kind of like cultural conflicts around the world? So like, how do you think the changes and the ramifications of this concept and this idea and how it has evolved across time during these, yeah, almost 2 decades. Yeah, just it would be very interesting to see it from your perspective.
Thank you so much. Excellent question. Yes, of course, there's been a lot of change in the world since, over the past 30 years, since we started thinking of this idea of biocultural diversity. And there's been a lot of change also in how we think of it or the things that we focus on the most. What I think has not changed, and I will talk in a moment of what has changed, but what I think has not changed is the relevance of the idea for life on the planet today. And in fact, the worse things go, and the more we need to remind ourselves about what we have called in our motto, unity in biocultural diversity. Because we are diverse, it doesn't mean that we cannot be united. And if we are united, we can better support and sustain our diversity in both nature and culture. And both diversities are under serious attack today, and increasingly so. And so what we need to do is really to continue to push. It would be easy to become despondent and discouraged, um, to lose hope. But as I like to say, hope shouldn't be a noun. It should be a verb. It's not something that you sit there and wait for it to fall from the sky. It's something that you have to do. It's something that you have to create through your action and not losing heart, no matter how difficult things become. Um, and that's really the constant, I think, and in fact, something that, if anything, is more and more relevant and more the case. In terms of how the idea or the concept itself has evolved, I would say that the initial realization came really to me, first of all, from what I learned in the field from indigenous peoples. And, my field work was in southern Mexico with Mayan people, and this sense of interconnectedness of people and their natural environment is something that I learned directly there and from the Mayan people that I was working with. As a linguistic anthropologist, I also realize how language was imbued with this connection. For instance, um, I was studying more specifically ideas of health and illness among the Maya as a part of this large medical ethnobotany project that Professor Brent Berlin had there. And my task was more on the ethnomedical side, learning about what people think was health and what people think is illness in their culture. And I started noticing that they were using the same words to talk about the health of people and the health of the land. And it was like this kind of revelation almost to naive me back 40 plus years ago in the field, that revealed to me the depth of that connection, so much so that it is enshrined and conveyed and transmitted through language. And really, that's the thing that started sending me along this path of thinking of connectedness. Oh, these are all diversity, biodiversity, cultural diversity, linguistic diversity. They're forms of the diversity of life on the planet. And I bet that they are connected because ever since there have been humans on this planet, humans have developed and evolved in given ecological niches, and then for their own survival and thriving, they needed to develop in-depth knowledge of how to live in those ecological niches. And that knowledge, of course, is then conveyed through language. And so that was the initial line of thought. And I also started thinking that probably the same threats were confronting all diversity. And I was in the middle of those thoughts in 1995 when I happened to go to a conference and hear someone else talk about pretty much the same things. And I thought, I'm not the only person on the planet who was thinking this way. And so I grabbed this other person, and that was Dave Harmon, a conservationist by trade, who, however, had on his own developed similar ideas and, in fact, had started this cross mapping of the areas of biodiversity in the world on Earth, and the distribution of the world's languages. And there was this incredible overlap. And we started thinking, what happens if biodiversity is threatened? Obviously, it threatens the way of life of people, and the language of the environment is going to be affected too. And vice versa, if people are displaced from their own lands and territories, and are not able to carry on a certain way of life that was so embedded in that particular environment. Obviously, the knowledge of that environment is going to become obsolete. And so we started thinking of all these connections. We concentrated initially a lot on research, and produce maps and indicators and so on and so forth, and to work at the international level in international policy and conservation to see these ideas. The ideas ended up coming back to academia from the outside. Um, but once we had done all that, we started thinking, we need a larger revolution here, and that's a revolution that comes from people from all walks of life, changing the way they think and they see themselves in relation to one another in the larger world. And that's when we started thinking of storytelling as a way of communicate more widely, and that's how this magazine, which we call Landscape of Languages, basically came about, and it has become an incredible vehicle, well beyond what we imagined or expected, and it's carrying stories from people of real people from the real world, from all over the planet, and who are weaving together the story of biocultural diversity, the challenges, the victories, the ways in which essentially people, in spite of all the troubles that we're going through, are trying to build a different world, a world of unity in biocultural diversity. So that's what gets me back on my feet every day, and that's how I continue to build hope as a verb, so to speak.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
question, Anna. I hope if your question's answered, can we move to the next person? All right. So we see Tanvi Gurjar raise her hand. Tanvi, you can unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then ask your question. Thank you.
Yes, hello. Thanks a lot, Nishant. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
you're audible. Yes.
Okay, great. One second. I'm trying to turn my video on, but I am not able to at the moment. Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, we can see you. Yeah.
Okay, good. Hello. Firstly, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to interact with you. I'm a recent master's graduate student, or a recent master's graduate, and I'm very interested in exactly what your research aligns with, so biocultural diversity and ethnobotany, and sort of also understanding how we relate to the world through plants, and how just being able to draw parallels between botany or plants and resilience and ourselves can help us sort of better um, deal with challenges that we might be faced with. But my question is, I was just wondering, so how do you or do you have a particular sort of set of strategies or any advice when you are the only person in the room who has, or who feels that protecting or conserving biocultural diversity is important, especially when that room is filled with a lot of powerful, influential people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I've experienced a few circumstances like that, and I guess if you believe in what you do, you really have to steel yourself sometimes to stand by what you believe in. And admittedly, it is very difficult when uh, the other people in the room, as you put it, maybe people who have grown up in an urban environment, have grown up with an ideology and particularly an economic ideology that sees people as separate from the natural environment and if anything dominant over it. An ideology that sees nature as just being there for human use and extraction and for profit. How do you really break that barrier? It's not easy, but no matter what, I think that probably even some of the most hardened people that you might come across must have had some experience, whether it was, their grandma's garden and the memories of it as of being in it with grandma as kids, or going around with your buddies and picking up snakes and frogs, like I remember my brother doing. I grew up in Rome, and at the time, you didn't have to go too far to still find, say, marshes, wetlands, and so on, and that's what my brother did. So even if you grow up in an urban environment with that kind of disconnect, there's going to be some entry point where you can get through, not to the mind of people, but through to their hearts, and I think that's where understanding begins to happen. It's so easy to retrench when it comes to ideology or ideas, but feelings are something else. And so that was another reason why we chose storytelling, because it really speaks not only to the minds but to the hearts as well. In fact, it's the byline that we put in the magazine, really a way to speak to the minds and hearts. So yeah, you have to be brave, but also you can think of ways that are not confrontational, that are more emotive, and try to do it that way. No success guaranteed, of course, but it's probably the best way.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanvi, for that question. I can see that there's a question in the message box. I'll read it out. It's from Xitlali Aguirre, if I'm pronouncing it correct. He's from Mexico and wants to know, what do you think about the biocultural keystone species concept? Is it helpful, or does it reduce the complexity of indigenous knowledge to a small set of plant species?
Mhm. Shitlali, thanks for your question. Uh, yes, I mean, I would say yes and no. It is certainly something that has been noticed over and over again, that in many different cultures, the special importance is attributed to one or more species that that seem to have a special relevance, both biologically, by being maybe keystone species in an ecological sense, but also culturally important. And so I certainly don't don't condemn the idea of learning about biocultural keystone species. But of course, as every concept, if we look at it scientifically in the kind of reductionist way in which we often do science, then we lose important connections to many other things. At the very least, with all the uh, myriad cultural ways in which a biocultural keystone species may be important in the culture, and not just as a in an ecological sense, and the ways in which that particular species may be represented in myth, legend, folklore, song, dance, and whatever else. The ways in which knowing about a particular keystone species connects with knowing about a lot of other species that particular keystone species is connected to, because everything is interrelated. So yes, we can look at biocultural keystone species for whatever importance they have in a given culture, and at the same time make sure that we place that in context, and that we learn about the rich context, and again, not only material, but also cultural and spiritual, that particular species is embedded in. So again, I think it is an important and relevant concept, but also that it needs to be placed in context. So I hope I somewhat answered your question.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Zitlali, for your question. I am seeing Anju Bhatta Sehgal, who has raised her hand. Anju, ma'am, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and you can ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I am Anju Sehgal from India. And generally, I remain in India. These days, I'm in US and shall be going back to India soon on 19th of May. So thank you so much that I got the opportunity to interact and talk to you. So my question is regarding the ethnic languages and culture. Like you have shown that that you're working on landscapes. So do you study the interrelationship of ethnic languages other than American, or I can say about Indian subcontinent or any other country, and what relation it has with the culture and the biodiversity of that area. So this is my question, in case you can answer. Yes.
Thank you for your question. Absolutely. Although personally, in my own field work, I have confined myself to two continents. First, when I started out as a linguist before going to the US, again, having been born and having grown up in Italy, I went to Somalia with a group of Somali linguists with the idea of compiling a dictionary of the Somali language. And I did that for 8 years. So there was a big learning experience really about language and culture. And little by little, I realized the connection of language and culture with the environment. In that case, the particular focus of Somali people who are nomadic, being camels and other cattle, and the bush, and through which they take their camels to graze. Then again, I moved to studying and learning in a very different culture, farmers, Mayan farmers in southern Mexico. And then working with First Nations in Canada. So that's the extent of my experience. I have, although I did some field work in China and Japan, it wasn't particularly focused on linguistic aspects, or not directly. So I don't have firsthand experience with the diversity of Asian languages, and particularly the languages of India, which never cease to amaze me for their astonishing diversity. The more I learn, and the more I am astonished. But in the global assessments that we did of the state of the world's languages, of course, we dealt with the languages from everywhere and anywhere around the world, and it was definitely very instructive to learn about diversity, ethnic and linguistic diversity in India, and how complex and how interwoven also with the history, long-term history, but particularly the history of colonialism and British colonialism, and how the map was of ethnicity and language was rearranged at that time. So it's definitely part of the work that as Terralingua we have done, if not I personally, and it's something of great interest and again of constant amazement the more I learn about.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Anju. I saw the hand of Carolina Simone first. So Carolina, go ahead with your question. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Luisa. I'm happy to be here. I am researching about how to bridge or how to make available all of this amazing knowledge that is produced in academia about biodiversity and biocultural diversity, how this can enrich the education of very local grassroots communities in indigenous spaces. So I was wishing to ask you, inspired by Terralingua, how it will be using community science for researching tech in these spaces. Will that be like bringing a Western perspective, or how can I make that is, an academic perspective? How can I bring it to these spaces for engaging them in inquiry and research?
Well, that's another great question, and it couldn't be more timely because, believe it or not, just earlier this year, in March, Terralingua submitted a proposal for a grant from an educational foundation to develop a series of case studies of precisely academia community partnerships, and really two-way, equitable, mutual learning based partnerships for biocultural conservation. And we'll know later this year whether we receive that grant or not, but please stay in touch, because it is really very much centrally about that. And I have already indirectly answered your question. It's not about bringing Western perspectives, because the knowledge for bioculture conservation and restoration is there in communities, and may need to be rescued in part, documented from elders, if the younger generation no longer holds that knowledge, but the knowledge has been there, and the people who know best how to do bioculture conservation are the ones who have actually for generations lived in any particular place. The from the time that I was studying 30 plus years ago, when I felt that this kind of inquiry really couldn't be done within academia because it was so compartmentalized, things have changed and certainly have changed for the better. But there are still many obstacles, obstacles that are like intrinsic to leading an academic life, I think. Part of the reason why I didn't choose an academic career was that I was too committed to not just the growth of knowledge, but also action based on knowledge. And I felt that I had to do that outside of academia. Now it's becoming more acceptable, and academic can claim as part of their portfolio things that they do with communities. So some of the barriers that existed 30 years ago have started coming down. But I really, when we had that inaugural conference at Berkeley in 1996, after listening to people from different disciplines and indigenous persons who were there to talk and discuss and find common ground, I really, something emerged from my head. It was this image of the new university, which wasn't a campus with many different buildings. There was only one big circular building, and there were no desks, no rooms, no chairs, and people had to walk around a little bit like the Greek philosophers used to do. And you had to learn about all the disciplines. And then there were these kind of sliders that went into the community, and people went in and out between the community and the university. And that was my image of how everything is connected between disciplines and between academia and community. There shouldn't be barriers, there shouldn't be silos. Learning should be one seamless experience, and learning should be learning from books and learning from communities, and not mutually exclusive, but definitely supporting each other. So that's what we want to explore. And some of these things are already happening, and we want to learn more about what works in this regard, and then share again that knowledge with everyone as another contribution to, I guess, making change if we can. So yes.
Thank you so much. That's very, very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Carolina. Eric Witt, I see your hand is raised, so go ahead.
Yeah. So I actually had two questions, but I'll just answer the first one. If there's time, then I'll ask the second one. The first question is, have you been, I'm sure that, I understand that you've been in contact with many isolated communities, and I was curious if in general, and I'm assuming this is very depending on which isolated community that you've visited, but what would you be able to say in general how the people in the isolated community that you visited saw people in the surrounding area that were not in that isolated community?
Well, I couldn't claim to have visited very, very isolated communities, communities like some of the uncontacted Amazonian tribes, or so-called uncontacted. Nobody is really completely immune from contact, but the ones who at least try to stay away and that are allowed to stay away from contact with outsiders if they don't want it. But I have certainly visited communities where there was no roads to get to. For instance, in northern Mexico, in the Sierra Tarahumara, which was another project that I did in Mexico, we had to travel by riverbed. and to get to the communities. And certainly the feeling was that people simply wanted to be left in peace to continue to have their way of life as they had it for a long time, while in a number of ways also seeking to benefit from some of the opportunities, for instance, educational opportunities. Most communities realize that in order to be able to confront the outside world effectively, they need, unless they wall themselves out, as some, again, Amazonian communities have been trying to do. The only other way was to learn enough about the outside world in order to be able to deal with it and protect themselves, defend themselves if necessary, or gaining some of the opportunities, whether it was for healthcare or economic opportunities, etc. It's each community has its own perception, its own tolerance for how much they want from the outside world. But for instance, to give you the example of the Raramuri people in the Sierra Tarahumara, there had been essentially a hemorrhaging of younger people from the community toward the cities in search of work, because in part because of land grabs, in part because of climate change and many other factors. Tragically, in the Sierra Tarahumara, even the inroads of the drug cartels taking up land to grow cocaine and stuff, coca and the like. Younger people were less able to sustain themselves with traditional farming and to think of forming a family, et cetera, et cetera. So they had to go to work in cities to earn money. The elders, however, were concerned that that meant the beginning of the end for their communities, the beginning certainly of the end of their identity and way of life and traditional knowledge and so the project that we were doing was aimed at on the one hand supporting ecological restoration so that the environment might become more conducive again to life in the communities, and the strengthening of both the language and the traditional knowledge, strengthening the transmission, so that the younger generation wouldn't lose sense of their identity and would continue to hold that knowledge. And that's a huge challenge. I saw that also in my earlier field work in southern Mexico with Mayan people. People, younger people dressed in traditional dress, so displaying at least that kind of connection with their ethnic identity, would come to the clinic with even very sick kids that looked like they could die from a moment to the next from diarrhea, because they had not acquired the knowledge about what traditional medicinal plants could be used that grew right there in their communities, that they could have used at least at the first line of resort. So that's what confronts communities, and each one makes different choices. So I don't think that there is one size fit all, either in answering how people think about it or what kinds of solutions there are. There are communities who may decide to completely embrace modernity, quote unquote, and move on. Others, the other extreme, who shun contact and everything else in between. But it is a big issue for sure.
Yeah, that wasn't quite my question. Maybe I misexpressed myself. I'll just give an example. For example, I was living with a very uncontacted community in Ethiopia, and they would see even other people from other regions of Ethiopia as
Ah,
being foreigners.
yeah.
And they thought that Lalibela, which was not a very big town in Ethiopia, they hadn't even heard of the capital, that Addis Ababa. And they thought of Lalibela as being the largest city in the world. So my question was more so in that sense, like, did they see people in the surrounding areas as being foreigners, as
Yeah.
having very strange customs? Did they see them as being evil or maybe superior? And I'm sure this varies on the community that would happen, but would there be a general thing where we go in one direction or the other?
Well, of course, I mean, if there is one generalization, is that tends to be a sense of us and them overall, that one community identifies itself by being different in one way or another from other communities around, and it's kind of part of how people arrange themselves in a given area by if at the most basic level, maybe defining the boundaries of where they go to provision themselves, to find resources, and to go about their lives. There is no question that conflict exists between and among indigenous and other ethnic communities around the world. But it is also the case that there is, even with that sense of us and them, there has been trade from the dawn of humanity. There has been intermixing from the dawn of humanity, and people find ways to negotiate the difference between us and them. In all kinds of ways, without having to resort on conflict necessarily, and in fact, often benefiting mutually from the kind of distinctiveness, such as an example that comes to mind right now is between coastal First Nations in British Columbia and the ones in the interior. Coastal First Nations traded with the ones in the interior by bringing dried fish, which was coveted by people in the interior, and people in the interior might trade back with furs, and so on. Obviously, everybody knew this is us and that's them, but that us and them was actually mutually beneficial. So again, whether you're considered a friend or an enemy, a trading partner or not, etc. It depends on many cultural and historical circumstances. But yes, it is entirely possible to feel distinct and at the same time acknowledge that other people have their own ways of life, in some cases to our own benefit, in some cases maybe as a source of conflict. So there's all kinds of situations that I could think of, and of course, the more isolated you are, and the more autonomous your way of life is, the more, and that may be the case of the people in Ethiopia, in the area of Lalibela. I've visited Ethiopia, by the way, so I am familiar with that. The more others may seem strange, but if you scratch the surface, maybe there's more to it than that, and there may have been contact trade, absorbing elements from others, and so on and so forth. So it's really, the question is not an easy or an immediate one, I don't think. I hope I answered your question more clearly, having a sense of what you meant.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
And we'll have time maybe for another couple of questions. Because I will need to leave.
Yes, I completely understand. Can we take
at the
one
top
more
of the hour.
question?
Mhm.
Maria Lopez, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think my question is kind of related with Carolina's question, but from a more governmental perspective, because I would like to know your suggestions according to your experience, like how to address these topics on biocultural heritage, and particularly for me, because I am an archaeologist, how can we address these topics to recognize the relevance of these connections, the cultural and diversity connections in a long-term perspective, and how can we address this, for instance, when we are trying to collaborate with policy making in some government institutions? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, interestingly, that I haven't worked specifically on issues of biocultural heritage, but there is a lot of interest and a lot of action that I know of in that realm at the international level. In different contexts, in part, for instance, IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, has for quite a long time recognized cultural landscapes and is interested in the conservation of them. Other international organizations, ICOMOS, and for the life of me, I can't think of what the acronym stands for, but it is specifically an organization specifically devoted to cultural heritage, which has opened up to the idea of biocultural heritage. And in fact, if you are keen to know more, I could refer you, and you could send me an email to the chair of Terralingua's board, Jessica Brown, who is very much involved with that particular topic at the international level, and she would know plenty more than I do about that. So Nishant can send you my email address, and you can get in touch with me, and I can be happy to refer you to Jessica. Would have to say a lot more about that than I can. One more question, I guess, before I go. I saw that Christine had her hand up.
Yeah, you want to take another question? Okay,
Yeah, I can do
Christine,
that.
you can
Yeah.
go ahead. Thank
Hi,
you.
thank you. I'm trying to put, there you go, there's my video. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for the session. It's very, very nice. I'm a session instructor at the UVic, University of Victoria in British Columbia, so very close to you.
Yeah.
And I have a question regarding the First Nations, or here in BC and generally, I guess. So if we try to be good allies and to support biocultural conservation, which hopefully are projects that are started on a local level, that we can be allies, and it's not going to be top down in all these, issues. How can we do this when the First Nations, I found here, are at capacity with their levels of energy and time having to deal with many projects at the same time, while also managing many other crises. What is your suggestion how to be a good ally and how to support this from a research perspective, which doesn't often allow for that with the funding, like time, money, and then,
Oh gosh, yeah, that's an eternal problem for sure. Because I guess some of the funding agencies haven't gotten the idea yet that the timing of academic research and the timing of community work don't necessarily coincide. But I can only say, what we have done at Terralingua in our collaborations. We know that it can be overwhelming. You can't get there with your own project and say, would you do this in addition to da, 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 da. We have gone when we had opportunity and funding, etc., and just asked, what project are you doing right now that you could use help with? And it just turns the question on its head. It's a very simple switch, but it really works. And people start thinking, yes, we've had these tapes recorded from the elders for sitting in the archives for decades, and we really wanted to digitize them. And could you put some funding into that? And then we did that. We provided whatever technical or other advice that might be needed. And they were off to the races. And this was particularly the case in our collaboration with the San people here in BC. That's exactly what they wanted to do. And they wanted also to create books with traditional stories in St. Chothan for use by families and so on. All we did was support that, and they did the work that they wanted to do, and so there was no conflict, there was no overbearingness, and it was a wonderful collaboration. After that, another one that we had was they were interested in video training so that the younger people could document the elders or use video for language learning and other purposes that they had. And we supported that. So we went out, we did the work to find the funding. So it's really based on an idea of being of service, which of course that's what we can do as a nonprofit organization. Academia, as I was saying earlier, is still kind of getting on to that idea, but things are better. And I know that at UVic in particular, there's quite a bit of an ethos of already working with communities. So it seems to me that it should be a good environment. But I don't know if at UVic you know or are familiar with Professor Jeff Corntassel in Indigenous Studies. He's another board member of Terralingua. He's absolutely wonderful thinker, a really deep thinker on Indigenous issues in sometimes unconventional ways. For instance, thinking of the relationship between rights and responsibilities, and how really responsibility more than right is the Indigenous way of thinking, and so on and so forth. He would be a wonderful person for you to talk to, and he would probably have a lot of good advice on that particular question.
Thank you so much.
Recommend it.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm sorry that I have to go. I could keep going for the rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr.
And
Luisa,
if
for your
anybody
time.
has follow-up questions that you haven't had a chance to ask or haven't dared to ask, feel free to contact me and follow up later.
Yes, thank you so much again, Dr. Luisa, for your time. I'm sharing my email address below. So if anyone has any other questions, I can forward it to you so you can answer any queries.
Fantastic.
Thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone. And until next time, please take good care of yourself.
Thank you. And thank you, Nishant. This was fantastic, really well organized. Appreciate the opportunity. And thanks, everybody, for being here and listening to me go on and on.
Pleasure is all mine. The pleasure is all mine. Thanks again for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to
Thank
end
you
the
so
recording now.
much.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Take care.